That's one.
Is it working?
Hey, Gary.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, mate.
I want to
It's been
tell you
about
something.
2 hours.
Is your mate there? Is your
He's
pupil
going to
there?
be here soon, I hope. I don't know if I can add anyone else. Probably.
Is your pupil there?
No, he's not, unfortunately. We lost him.
Oh, what a pity, because I never understood a damn word he was saying, and you never heard understood a word he was saying. Well, that's good for business, because he'll come back and you'll have him back and you'll make more money.
Did you listen to what we were talking about?
Pull your leg and pull his legs a little bit, because he seemed like a real golf enthusiast.
He is. He was enjoying it, I think. Did you enjoy the information?
Oh, well, everything you say makes sense because you're a pro.
What about that story? You can't beat me, then don't give me a lesson. Come on, don't give me that.
No, well, Trevino and I both said that. You know, they asked us who. We said it at different times. Who's our coach? Well, I did have a coach. Vivian's father used to help me a little bit, but didn't really know the intricacies of the game. But Trevino, when asked after he'd won majors, they said, well, who's your coach? He says, when I find somebody that can beat me, I will have a lesson from him. But that doesn't really apply. That was just a quick answer. Sometimes you can get an answer from a simple person in life, irrespective of what it is. And that's why I always wonder why people are so critical of a politician that they say flip-flops. Well, the mind is supposed to flip-flop. Your mind is supposed to be a scientific machine that changes from time to time. And Winston Churchill, my great hero, said, I'm never embarrassed by putting my foot in my mouth. All I do is change my diet. And the thing is, you're here to learn, and by changing your mind, there's no such thing as flip-flopping. If you don't change your mind in life as you go along, you become stagnant.
Well, I think that's how they say that if you're in the presence of somebody in a cult, because they all say the same thing.
Exactly. You know, it's the mind. As I come back to you, Terry, this is a thing that we should, if I was you as a golf pro, I'd be sitting down with some of my people, particularly the young guys. And I was asked by my grandson here who played golf if I would go to a certain school and talk to the children. And I went there. There were about 30 or 40 of them there. You know, with disciplinary action or...
I don't think I can get you in. Gary's talking right now.
Or the parents complain about it.
Run with it with Gary's live now.
Yeah. So did you not hear what I was saying?
Instagram.
No, I was just saying. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? So I went to the school to give the kids a lesson, and there were about 30 of them there. And I said, and the coach said to me, "Let them have it, because if I say anything that's tough, the dean's on my butt, or the parents say I'm a bully." So I said, "Good morning, guys and girls. I'm here because I love you and I want to help you." I said, "Put up your hands who wants to be a professional golfer." All 30 hands went up. I said, "You little fat pigs, you got no chance. You got no chance." They said, "Why?" I said, "Well, your little mummy's giving you breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you got TV, clothes, and a roof over your head, and blankets, and a school." I said, "Most kids in the world don't have one of those, and by the time you wake up and have had your breakfast, they've practiced for an hour already because they have this passion." There's a great word that nobody you've ever had on your show has ever heard. It was Winston Churchill saying, it's called fixity of purpose. It means a passion, a desire to do well. And this is something that you got to try to instill in these young kids. If you want to develop a champion, it's not going to be, as you and I discussed earlier, purely on theory. It's going to be the guy who has it, who has the mind, who loves to suffer, who loves to do well.
Did your mind get tougher? What we talked about, Gary, if you don't mind mentioning, is your background and how you became mentally tough. And it was through some of your family circumstances. Did you get tougher as a player through your adversity?
Very much so. You know, you believe in something. It's like a man, you know how to swing, you know the theory, you know how you've got confidence here, but you've got to go into the tournaments and practice and put it into practice. And that's the beautiful thing about adversity. People all think it's something terrible, but it's the greatest gift that can be bestowed upon you. And people, some go into depression, some commit suicide, some get divorced, but we've got to be taught. And this is why I find schools so, I don't like to use pathetic, but they don't develop a character for a young man or a young woman. It's purely academics. They take out physical fitness in schools instead of adding it. I mean, you know, it just doesn't make sense. Most kids, when they leave school, don't even know how to address somebody. You say to a kid, "How are you?" And he turns around, he says, "Good." He never says, "Fine, thank you, sir. How are you?" So I say to them, well, listen, if I ask you how you are, can you not ask me how I am? Because I'm giving you love and you're not giving me any love. But schools, and of course, parental guidance, but the schools have got to put in exercise because for longevity, you've got to exercise, you've got to sleep, and you've got to eat right. And what is destroying America's youth? Obesity.
Well, have you seen the COVID, Gary? The level of obesity versus the chances that you get really sick with COVID is very highly related.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, any disease, if you're obese, you're going to have a greater chance of attracting the disease. But do you know, in 1968, there was a Hong Kong flu that 1 million people died of. And there was a Spanish flu in 1915, unless I'm mistaken.
18.
Well over 5 million. I might be wrong. Some people said 50 million, but there were millions and millions and millions of people that died. So this has been going on throughout history. But people who are ignorant of the fact and haven't done their studying are not 100% aware what has taken place in history.
Hey, let me ask you a question. We have Terry Pilkadaris here. He's an Australian tour player, and he is a big fan of yours. He says hi. We were talking about his game earlier and how, you know, let's say you go to a series of tournaments and you play poorly when you're in your prime. And if you look at it these days, or especially even 10 years ago, it might have been worse. When you say that only if the whole world is nails, if you have a hammer, the whole world is nails, right? So yeah. the coaches recently tend to approach poor form with just swing changes, right? In your day, and when you were, successfully managed your own game, how did you deal and how did you think about the fact that you weren't playing your best, and how did you get back into it?
Is he online now?
He is.
Well, nice to meet you, mate. You know what I feel about Oz? I just love Australia, and Nicholas and I had so many great battles to see who could win the most Australian Opens. And Terry, I'll tell you something, all records in golf have been broken. But I set a record in the Australian Open in 1965 at Kooyonga, 264. I shot 262s in the same round. Still a record today. But Australia is a fabulous country, and I love the people. But I'll tell you very simply, everybody has their time when they go through times and they don't play well. So I found when I was not playing well, I made a point of really working, doing more exercises on my hip and rotation, because rotation is like the great tonic. If you rotate well in your backswing, it's a tonic. And the other thing I did, I spent more time on my short game, because the more putts you hold, the more confident and you feel strong. You hold a long putt, you walk off like Tarzan.
That's the truth.
If you miss a shorty, you walk off like a dog with his tail between his legs. So holding putts gives you big confidence. If your short game, I saw Tiger play junk and shoot 66 simply because he putted so well. So if you play bad, you spend more time on your short game and rotate that hip, and I tell you, it's a tonic.
I got another question for you, Gary. Is it true that you used to fast on Mondays?
I did quite a bit of fasting, and I wish I'm doing a study on it now. I'd like to do some more. I haven't had breakfast for 9 days in a row, but I think the answer is to have no dinner for 9 days in a row and have a good breakfast and a good lunch. I'm experimenting with fasting. It's been it's been in circulation for thousands of years.
Yes.
And a great Indian scientist told me the less you eat, the longer you live. And I went on a fast for water for 3 days. And on the 4th day is the strongest I've felt in the last 20 years. So we do ask our stomachs to digest too much. And this is where most of the problems are started, in the gut. Funny enough, I'm reading a book called Eat to Beat Diseases now. And there's certain foods they tell you must eat. But people don't worry, Terry. They don't worry about health, and they don't worry about exercise. It's easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than to get somebody to do exercises and watch their diet.
You know, in terms of golf, if somebody comes and they already work out, and we say you should work out like this to improve your game, easiest thing in the world. Someone comes along and they don't exercise, and we try and get them to exercise, very difficult. It's such a black and white thing in terms of groups of people, isn't it? I have another friend of mine on here, Paul Wayland, and he was very much inspired by you to watch his diet. So he just wanted to say thanks for your inspiration.
Well, that's so nice to know that I can have some influence over people, because I've had, well, probably the most experience of any man living today. I mean, the Hogans and Sneeds are gone now, and I'm 84, and I've had so much experience, and you learn the hard way from experience, and if you can impart that knowledge. But a lot of young guys are very, very, what's the word? I don't know whether it's cocky, or don't have the humility to realize they think they know everything. And you've only got to find a man. A perfect illustration of all is Jordan Spieth. He wins 4 majors, and I tell you hardly hear from him as a top player for a long time. He will come back. I hope he comes back. He's a wonderful young man, charismatic. He's the kind of guy that golf needs. But we all have to be humble, and we can all learn something in this game, because this game is the toughest of all.
They call it hubris. That's the best word for it, Gary. Hubris is like a unfounded overconfidence.
Yes, I call it a disease.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway, I wish all your young pros the best of luck, and hope they do well. And they've got to realize that if you got to work hard, man. You got to be an animal. You got to be. If you want something, in English they say, if you want something badly enough, be careful, you'll get it.
Gary, you can't leave that quickly. We have to. We're going to keep on to you as long as we can. I've got one more question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between Hogan and Sneed?
Hogan had an absolute swing that was mechanically built up from A to Z, or A to Z, as you say, where Sneed woke up with that swing. He was the greatest athlete that golf has ever seen by a mile. And naturally so. He could take the ball out of the cup with his knees straight and take the ball out. He could kick the top of a normal door. We always used to put his leg, kick the door, Sam. 5 one-arm push-ups at 65. He was a remarkable man. But Ben Hogan was the scientist of all scientists, and there has never, ever, and I played from Tommy Armour, which was 20 years before Hogan, or way before I played with him, Gene Sarazen, Henry Cotton, and I've also played with Tigers. I've played with them all. None of them had the natural ability that Sam Sneed had. He was, if you gave him the equipment today and the conditioned golf courses, you know, when I first played golf in championships, they never even changed the cup every day. They changed it, never changed the cup. We had to rake the bunkers with our feet. There were spike marks, no machines to cut the green short. The ball fell out of the sky. I went to Dunlop's and told them that once. They didn't believe me. And then I proved it to them. They changed the mold. So it's been a fascinating journey for me. And, you know, I would give anything to just spend 1 hour with Jordan Spieth. If I can't make him the best player in the world, then my name is...
He's got it, Gary. We talked about it earlier, right? So the thing that you can't teach is between the ears. And
well said.
What is it?
Well said. As I'd like your 2 young guys to hear this. And I played with Tom Weisskopf a lot. And obviously Nicklaus is my best friend, and I played a lot with him. Tom Weisskopf was better than Jack Nicklaus. I mean, people get a shock when I say that. But he never had the desire. He sulked a lot. One day he was smiling, the next day he wasn't. He gets in a press conference and says, I hate golf. And Tom and I've spoken about this. If he had Nicholas's head, if I may be so bold to say, if he had my head too, he would have won 10 majors. I mean, this guy was so good. It was, but you see that in business, you see that in husbands, you see that in children, in every walk of life.
That's the truth. Hey, let me ask you a question. You can leave anytime you want, but I'm just going to ask you whilst you're in front of me until Jordan switches you off. Isn't it interesting? We're talking about the evolution of kind of teaching, how the information in the early part of your career came from the players. I mean, I don't know if you had teachers then, and it moved through, kind of the 70s and 80s, and now the narrative, like you're saying about players, is more from the teachers and less from the more from the teachers, less from the players. How do you think that narrative and kind of information interchange has changed the game?
I think it's the old saying about horses for courses. There are certain pros that are magnificent for weekend golfers. There are others that are great for beginners. They have a flair. They know how to encourage them. They know how to be polite, etc., etc. But then there are players for champions. And how is it possible? I find it very hard for a man to teach a Tiger Woods, for example, that has never really been in the arena, doesn't know what it's like to get a 4 on the last hole, or to be leading by a shot with 4 holes to go in a major, and having to consistently and constantly face up to the adversities. You can't expect him to know that, to be fair to him. He doesn't know that. Most of the stuff that he's teaching is stuff that he's read and he assumes is right. And that also, I find teachers, look, I'm a great fan of teachers, but we talk about the higher echelon, the intricacies of teaching. You've got to understand the man's DNA. That's terribly important. You've got to understand what makes a man function. I wouldn't just take a top pro and say, this is what you got to do. I'd study him. And I'd play around a golf with him and see how he thinks and the mistakes he made. And I'd question him to death. Then I'd start teaching him.
That's really cool. Did you have any kind of stock shots or things like that you lent on under pressure, last 4 holes, needing to win?
Go-to shots.
Go-to shots. Well, the one thing that I can assure you, that if you ever need a par on the last hole and you've got an iron shot to the green, don't try and hit it straight. Or if you've got a driver on the last hole to put on the fairway, don't think about hitting it straight. You better draw it or cut it. Because if you aim up the middle of a fairway that's 40 yards wide, you've got 20 yards of error on both sides. If you aim it on the right and draw it to the left and fade it, you've got 40 yards. Now, anybody that doesn't like double the odds is an idiot.
We like double the odds. It's unbelievable.
But also the big thing is, you see, this is something I have tried to help. I've helped a few young pros. A guy in South Africa wasn't making the cut, and he was going to give up golf, and a friend of mine said, would you spend one day with him, which I did. I spent one day with him. I said, look, all these things we discussed, it's going to take you 2 months of hard practice. He went to the next tournament, and he won it. Because it changed him. He actually grasped what I was saying very quickly. But I tell you, this game of golf, you've got to get the mind right. And here is the big thing. You've got to, which you and I discussed this morning, Terry, you've got to believe. You've got to believe you're the best. Now, lots of guys tell you they believe, but when they're under the gun, they really don't. They get on the first tee and they poop themselves and they get all negative thoughts and bugs coming into their head. It's that mind. Oh, you've got to get them. When I played against Nicholas, you could see he got on that first, and Tiger, they just believed they were going to win. I mean, it stuck out. It stuck out, I don't know, like a pimple on your nose. But I can tell you one thing, I played with a lot of guys who were doing a lot of talking, and boy, they were petrified when they get on that first tee.
Yeah, that's the truth. Did you have many swing thoughts when you were playing?
Over the years, I did experimenting, obviously, but the one thing that really enabled me to win 165 tournaments was the fact that when I was a young man, I had the honor of playing with Hogan, and he spoke about the importance, and I was lucky because he didn't speak to many people. And he told me, and I'll tell you a mistake I made with Hogan, and he told me to rotate that hip like a snake. He said, that brings the club down on the inside. You feel as though you're hitting the inside of the ball. You stay on line as you're going through. You stay low through the ball and you finish with balance. And you get through the ball with speed. I'll put emphasis on it. You get through the ball with speed. Anytime you go into the ball in slow motion, it's a bad shot.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's like what we were talking about earlier, right? With Seve in when he was in 1986 when he chunked it in the water. That's basically what he did.
Well, that's right. And I mean, there's another miracle man, Seve. I mean, Tiger Woods, Ballesteros, and Phil Mickelson have been the three geniuses of golf that ever played. They were all bad drivers of the ball, and they excelled. They excelled to such a degree. There was something like 24 majors between them. It's gone off.
Oh, you lost me. I'll join. Keep going.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I said my point there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the big thing is this. You see, when you live in America, the greatest country in the world, it's a land of milk and honey. And people get a sense of entitlement. If you want to be the best, you got to be an animal. You got to be an animal in a cage. And although you're being fed good food, you got to be hungry. Even though you fed good food, you got to be hungry. Because I'll tell you what, Terry, I'm 84 now. My body feels like I'm 50. I've got energy. I've broken my age over 2,500 times in a row. I want to be the first man to break his age by 18 shots. I've done it by 16, and if I don't get sick, I'll do it. But the big thing, you've got to have a goal. And tomorrow's just around the corner. All these young boys that you're teaching and these young pros must understand, their careers will be over tomorrow. It comes by like lightning. So you only have one chance. Knock on the door and open the door. Don't say mañana. The worst saying for golf is mañana.
We have a PGA Tour winner on here, Martin Trainer. He won in Puerto Rico last year.
Yes.
So if you were to say, you mentioned finding your own DNA. I mean, obviously that includes your golf swing, but also your personality style and how you attack a golf course, right? So what is the secret to playing within your DNA and not getting diverted too much?
I couldn't answer on Martin because I don't know him. I don't know how he's built. I don't know what his short game is like. I don't know what his swing is like. I don't know what equipment he uses. I don't know what sort of upbringing he's had. I don't know what sort of a person he has, and that would be a wild guess. It's like a doctor giving you a diagnosis without giving you a CAT scan. Perfect answer.
But just generally, the DNA includes all of it, right? In equipment and your personal fitness style and things like that.
Oh, it does. I've always said to be a champion golfer is like a puzzle. It is full of pieces. You got to have patience. You got to have love. You got to have hard work. These are all pieces that you fit in the puzzle, and you got to know how to put them all together in that puzzle. It's just not one thing. There are things that are predominant, more predominant over others, but those little things also enable you to win a tournament by one shot. And you think of losing a major, which I lost a lot, in spite of the fact I won 18 majors on both tours. I lost a lot by one shot. I lost Augusta twice by one shot. And really, I mean, I never used the word luck, but it was just dead unlucky that the one time was stupidity, course management in my mind.
That's terrific. I hope we're not keeping you too long because I cannot keep asking you questions, Gary. So
I'm surprised you want to ask so many, but it's a pleasure.
No, but you can. I'm glad you're sitting down. So, how about the big three? You guys, you're all doing so well at the same time. Palmer, Nicholas, and you, all winning tournaments, but all in different ways, huh?
Well, first of all, without don't let the wrong thought come into your mind initially. But there will never be another big three like we were, not in playing ability, although we won something like 56 majors between us and over 300 golf tournaments, but the friendship. We traveled around the world to Australia, to Canada, to China, to Japan, to South Africa, the entire world living together as brothers. Now, we were as fierce competitors, please believe me, as Tiger. And we all wanted to beat the living hell out of each other. And we didn't hide it. When we lost, we acted like gentlemen and like men. And we said, damn it all, I'll get you tomorrow. But the thing is that the brotherliness that existed, today it's such a big business. The guys finish the tournament, they're off in their home jet, and they're gone. Yeah. So it's a different world, and understandably, because today is a massive business. I mean, it's not the game that we used to play and the camaraderie that existed. It's a very, very different business, and it's ununderstandable.
It's interesting. Somebody just mentioned it's kind of like Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic right now, how they're all, been really good for a really long time.
No, that's right. And I think that these people that judge the best players that ever lived, they're very inclined to look at people, their charisma, how beautiful their swing was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As I told you, they don't look at their record on paper. Just put the records on paper and see who had the longevity. That's why I put Snead right up there, because Snead had unbelievable longevity. And why? Because he had the body to do it. If you can have the best, you can have the Rolls Royce or a BMW. If you don't have the engine and you don't look after it, it ain't gonna last.
That's the truth. That's incredible stuff. Hey, let me ask you a question. The reason we're talking is because I posted your swing on Instagram today. Did you have a stock shot? Did you have a shape that you preferred to draw or fade, or what was your shape?
Well, being small in stature, I hated a fade. I could play it when I needed it. Always a draw. Because a draw is a more natural part of the swing. If you look at, you're on a flatter plane and you're staying with the ball, a more natural part of a swing was to draw the ball. And I think, I look at Palmer, I look at Snead, I look at so many of the wonderful players I've seen, Tom Watson. I think Tom Watson has, in my opinion, a better swing than anybody playing today. If you look at his swing, it's for me, it's perfection.
You know whose swing I love is Peter Thompson. Terry Pilkadaris just mentioned it.
Oh, yes. Peter Thompson, he was probably the straightest hitter that I've ever seen. And I mean straight. I mean, most people, Nicholas faded it, Hogan faded it, Andrew it, Snead had a draw, Palmer had a draw. But Peter Thompson he bisected the fairways. Was a hang of a golfer. Can you imagine 5 British Opens, and he won 10 senior tournaments in one season here? What a golfer he was. One of the greatest games, if I may tell you, for the Aussies sitting there, we played at Huntingdale in Melbourne, which was one of his home golf courses, and we were in the final of the PGA, 36-hole match play. We played shot for shot. I don't ever remember having a match where we played shot for shot for shot for shot. Fairway green. And I beat him on the last hole by birding it, and I've never forgotten that match all my life.
That's what we do it for, isn't it? It's just so fulfilling.
And Peter Thompson was I think the man who we must give great credit to in golf is Bobby Jones. He was the most well-spoken man. He was always shaven. He was always beautifully dressed and beautifully spoken, as I said, and had a knowledge of how to handle people. He was the ultimate gentleman of golf. Ultimate gentleman. And Peter Thompson was probably one of the most highly intellectual of all golfers, extremely well-read on a variety of subjects. Not to say that his opinion was always right. He was a very sarcastic person.
We have a famous cricketer on here, Gary, Simon Doull from New Zealand.
Oh yes,
and he always plays. He plays in the Dunhill with your good buddy.
Yes, Johan Rupert.
Let me ask you about your fitness. How much time do you spend doing fitness each day, and how do you break it down between, kind of weights and stretching and kind of cardio stuff?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say hello to him and say how nice it is to talk to him. I really love his country, and Bob Charles and I've been friends for ages, and Bob Charles has been, what a golfer, what longevity, what a putter. He's in the top 5 best putters that ever lived. And and I'm also I love cricket. I got full honours for cricket at school, so I love cricket. And I'm so happy to see New Zealand. Their cricket has improved tremendously over the last, far as weights. Funny enough, all my life, being young and full of energy, which I still am today at 84, but I oozed with energy. I never got tired. It was a great gift. I never got tired. And I always put more emphasis on exercise than eating. Now I put more emphasis on a slight 51-49 food, 49 exercise. They are, and also sleep. There's certain things you've got to do to perform well, but there are exceptions. I mean, a man like Tiger Woods has sleep deprivation. He doesn't sleep well. Now, I go to bed. Last night, I slept 11 hours. I'd be leading a tournament and sleep 11 hours. I've always exercised, try to eat properly, although my ideas of eating in the old days don't compare to today. But I have to be more sophisticated now because I'm 84 and I want to live to be 100, man.
That's great. I just got a book, and going back to what you're saying about fasting, it's a book you need to get. I'll send it to Jordan. It's called Lifespan: Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. And a lot of the things that you're talking about are very true. You know, quantity of sleep. He talks about intermittent fasting is a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all good stuff.
You're so right, Terry. We don't need 3 meals a day.
That's true.
That's only because our parents started that. 2 meals a day. I'm busy living on 2 meals a day. Only trouble with Jordan around, I snack a lot. He's a bit of a porky.
What was I going to say? You're going to put me off with that one. He's a good man, hey, did you name him after Mike, or did he get named after Michael Jordan?
No, his father had to do with that. I never had to do with that. No.
So have you been watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan?
Yes, we did. Yeah, what an athlete. What an athlete he is. And wasn't it nice to see him give $1 million the other day to this particular charity? And, you know, one guy turned around and said to me, which is typical, you know, you can never please them all. It's like President Trump does such a great job, and all people do is just criticize. And it's the hardest job in the world. I wouldn't want that job for anything. I've loved all presidents of America. But, I mean, it's just, why do people live on criticism? It's just a shame. But
I've been lucky enough to teach quite a few ministers and politicians over the years. And it's almost like there's a caricature. I can't speak to anyone individually, but they have a much greater intelligence than I think the general public can give them credit for. I would say that just right now.
No question about it.
Because they have a big job and they have to communicate it in a simple way, right, on some level.
You're right. And I mean, I watched the other day, which made me feel very sad. I watched the American ladies soccer team win the World Cup. And, I was so excited for America because football, or soccer as we call it, is not the national sport. It's never been the big sport of America. It's growing in leaps and bounds now. And they come across and they win the world championship, which to me, I was so excited. And then I saw the captain of the team use the F word or terrible language about Donald Trump. They took their shirts, they turned them inside out. You know, people want to burn the flag, do this kind of stuff. Look, we live in America. Thank God it's one of the few countries on earth, think about it, that there's freedom. And this is so important. And when I hate to see somebody burn the flag, give the flag the blame. The flag is a symbol of greatness. Now, you might not have a president or a leader or a captain that doesn't have the qualities of a leader. That's possible. But you don't have to use this terrible language. You can say, I don't like Donald Trump. I happen to like Donald Trump. I look at what he does. He's lowered the taxes. He's given blacks. He's really made an effort to do more for the black people. I think the black people have had a rough deal in the 60 years I've been coming here. He's met Kim Jong-un on the border on a demilitarized zone. Mm-hmm. If you look at the things he's done, he's stopping the SM-13 gangs. He's building the strongest army in the world because there are many countries in the world want to destroy America. Remember that? And the young people of this country, they don't remember how people fought for freedom. They fought and died. My brother went to war at 17. My brother-in-law died fighting for freedom. It's not a gift. It's not luck. Luck is the residue of design. These people fought for freedom, and I hear people talking about socialism. This is going to be our theme if we win the next election. Have they any idea? I've traveled more miles than any human being ever, and I've seen what socialism has done to country and destroyed them. My goodness me, that just upsets me.
I can see the steam coming out of your ears. Let me ask you a golf question, and you let me know when it's enough time. How, obviously, lowest score wins, but how do you win? You've done it more than anyone.
You win by believing that you're going to win. As I come back to that thing there, you believe, I'm going to win this tournament. And I can tell you something without boasting. I lost a lot of tournaments coming down the line. Majors, Augusta, twice I lost by one shot. In fact, I tied the one time I lost. But I came down the line. I really believed that I was going to win. And I never, ever choked. I hit bad shots. I never choked because I thought to myself, how can I let a sport like this make me get all nervous and not be able to perform when I've trained harder than any athlete ever, hitting balls, mind sessions, eating properly. Nobody's without boasting, nobody's put all of these factors in. And the reason I did it, because I suffered like a junkyard dog. And the reason I did it, because I was small and not big and strong like the others. So it was a blessing. You see, all that stuff was a blessing which made me work harder. So all this comes into your subconscious. Am I going to now choke? Am I going to believe I can't do it? And if I don't do it, so what? But man, I tell you one thing. I'm going to try. And when I hit a bad shot, I'm not going to think back. Because thinking back cannot rectify it. When you've hit a bad shot or you missed, I see guys miss a short putt today. They stand there and they look at the green. They tap down a little so-called spike mark. Why didn't they do that before they putted? And they stand there and they look at the hole like, they're the only ones in the field and they've missed a short putt. Miss the damn thing and get the hell out of there. Nobody cares a damn.
Terrific, Gary. Thank you. Let me ask you one more question. What was Ben Hogan's secret?
His secret was in the dirt. I say this unequivocally, categorically, was in the dirt because he started off and only won his first major at 34. Think about that. And for your athletes and for your clients that are listening, and obviously you do a very good job, Terry, but obviously you've got to understand that Ben Hogan won 9 majors, but went to war in his prime for 5 years. Then had an accident, a car accident, that was the worst accident any golfer that I know of has had, although there have been some bad ones. So for 30 majors in his prime, 30 majors, he never played. He would have won the most number of majors without a doubt. But unfortunately, there are no ifs and ands in this game. It's only what's written on the paper, sadly.
You got any funny stories of how you and Jack and Arnie used to play with each other in terms of pranks and things like that?
Yeah, Jack Nicklaus Arnold was very punctual. And Jack would always keep him waiting. And it used to burn Arnold Palmer up left, right, and center. And I'd fly with Arnold in his airplane, and he flew the airplane like he played golf, trying to go through clouds and gaps. I lay on the floor. I was like an ostrich. I want to tell you, that's when I did choke. That's when I did choke.
Well, because you weren't under control.
And we went in South Africa. We went to the game reserves and walked in the bush and were charged by animals. We had an incredible friendship. And I'll never forget, we went down a gold mine, 8,000 feet. And we saw these people working in that gold mine, a dog's life. And we came up and they were pouring the gold into bars. There must have been $1 billion in that room. And there was a bar lying on the table. And the guy said, anybody who can pick this bar up can have it. So Arnold said, can I ever try? The guy said, yes. And Arnold had the strongest hands you ever saw. Put him on the bar and picked it up. This guy started to choke. And Arnold said, it's all right. You don't have to stutter and choke. You're not going to lose your job. You can have it back. But I mean, boy, what did he have? A combination. There's never yet been the combination, but it's coming. A man with Nicklaus's legs, his legs are like John Rahm.
That's right.
John Rahm can play shut-face golf and get away with it because his legs are so strong. And Dustin Johnson can play shut-face golf because he's tall with a big arc and very strong and gives him time to get back. But be careful with shut-face golf. And I tell you, there's some teachers that are teaching it. That is poison.
It's a very popular thing on Instagram.
Yeah. If you look at the superstars of the past, and a superstar, you've got to win 6 majors, in my opinion. Let's say there are 12 of them that have done it. The only 2 that played shut-face were Palmer, and his career was very short, and Trevino, who stood so wide open he could get away with it. But to have things normal, you do not want to be shut-faced.
That's good info. Hey, let me ask you a question. I've never really known. How long was Ben? Was he a long hitter?
Ben Hogan?
Yeah.
If he had played today, he'd be on the 300 mark.
Really? So above average?
Yeah. Oh, you're well above average. You know, I say 300, but I mean the average guys hit the ball 300 today.
That's right.
I'm just taking a guess, a minimum of 300. I mean, a man like, I tell you who's really is Justin Thomas. I'm very impressed with him. And he hits the ball, some of these drives sometimes go 330. I would say he was on a par with Dustin. Thomas, yes. Generally speaking.
Right.
I mean, I would love to have seen Nicklaus and Woods have a competition, because Nicklaus in 1961 in Ohio had a wooden driver and the ball they used in those days, and won the long driving competition 341 yards. He kept that money clip in his pocket until today.
Is that right?
Yeah. So what would that have done with this ball today? Well, I mean, I couldn't break my age. I'm averaging 72 at 84. If I had the old equipment, I'd be shooting right about 76, 77.
I think the interesting thing we talked about earlier is how the new age, they get stuck and things like this. If you look at Jack in those days, he used all of his legs and all of his arms. Like, he really, threw the club at the ball, right? He said he needed to release it early to hit straight.
Well, you see, I disagree with that theory. If you use your hips correctly, if you're on the plane helps you to square the club face up at impact. Now, I've never read this, and you've never read this.
We talk about this. I'm gonna talk about
the plane helps you coming in from a flatter plane and dropping the club to the inside. If you rotate properly, it squares the club up with your hands automatically. Your hands are passengers. Your power comes from your gut. Look at your gut and your thighs and your calves and your feet. Look at the size of those muscles. Your hands are puny. Even Arnold Palmer's strong hands were puny compared to Nicklaus's legs. So if you use the rotation properly, this is where people get confused. If you get on a flat plane with your hands under the shaft, open face, and you rotate those hips, everything will square up automatically.
So good. So there is research to show, I mean, if you can imagine, we call it offense and defense, right? So if you get steep early in your downswing, you have to play defense, you have to block it or whatever. But if you are allowing the club to go into the right position, then you can keep on turning on the power as much as you need to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I tell you, it makes a massive difference. And but every sport, I mean, I spoke to Roger Clemens once and I said, man, look at those big arms you got. Then why do you pitch so hard? He says, I've never pitched with my arms. He says, I pitch I rotate with my stomach. Then I went to Japan and I looked at these karate guys. They broke a brick with their hands. And I said, wow, what speed are your arms and shoulders? Nine. All in hip. He says, play a son. I grab your heart out of your stomach. I grab your heart out and I show you with such speed, I show you before you die. So every sport, when I was a young man, they used to do the shot put with the shoulders and the arms. It's all with the hips now. The javelins with the hips. Every sport is done with the core. The core is the secret.
Yes, it's interesting, when you have injuries to the extremity, like baseball players have that Tommy John surgery, then they often trace it back to having to fix their legs and hips and core to get it better. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. I've seen so many wonderful golfers, and I've seen golfers who could have been much better. It's been a wonderful journey. I've seen guys who've wasted talent. I've seen guys that loved to travel, guys that didn't like to travel, guys who blew all their money, guys who saved it. It's been a wonderful, and the people that I've met, just imagine I've played or visited or been with almost every president in the last 70 years. with the emirs in the Middle East, with all the top golfers and athletes of different sports, and poor people in India, poor people in Africa, and the royal family. I mean, what a life I've had. And from a poor boy, and I'll never forget, here's the other thing for me, which I never mentioned. One of the strongest things for my success is to realize that there's somebody greater than you, and you have to answer to that person. Have I made mistakes? Plenty. But at least it's somebody you can take stock with, and he inspired me and has given me tremendous strength to accept his will.
Yeah, you often thank the Lord for your it. You're born with your it.
Correct.
Which is, an unbelievable advantage. Did you have any major injuries in your career?
I'll answer that. It'd be very precocious if I thought I just had it, that I was that good. No, I'm not that good. And but the other thing, injuries, I've been very blessed. I played rugby at school, which is a rough sport. I had a cartilage taken out. I did arm wrestling in the rain, and I had a little operation on my arm. But I've been very lucky. I've been injury-free because I've kept exercising and stretching, building and stretching and doing certain exercises with speed, and some others are slow.
Yeah. I think you mentioned a good point when we look at the new age, is that they play a lot more tournaments these days than you guys did.
Way more. Yeah. Well, we didn't have we didn't have a tour of a lot of golf tournaments, and Arnold Palmer was the first man to win $100,000 in the year. I remember it like yesterday. 100,000 the whole year. Well, I was leading money with 64,000, 29 tournaments, and a stroke average of 69.
Incredible. Gary, what an unbelievable privilege. I don't want to wear you out. It's a great... actually, you've said to me before that when your two greatest blessings that you were born with was your level of energy and your capacity to just have it, which I think that's two pretty good gifts that you got bestowed with.
Yes, I've been very blessed, and I never forget to say thank you every day of my life. Never forget a day. But I want to end up and say, I was playing with a South African golfer the other day in South Africa, and he plays the tour here. And he said to me, you know, when you and Jack and those guys won your tournaments, there are only about 25 guys you had to beat. We got to beat 70 and 80 and 90. Well, I came back here now with this corona, and I sat down. And I wrote down names that he's probably never heard of. Tommy Bolt, Mike Suchak, Dow Finsterwald, Gabe Brewer, Julius Boris, who's the oldest man to ever win a major championship, Tom Watson, Bob Golby, Nick Faldo, Jack Nicklaus, Sam Snead, Ben Hogan, Weiskopf, Irwin, Raymond Floyd, who was one of the most fierce competitors I ever saw, Fuzzy Zola, 3 majors. I went through all these names, and there are 80 of them. I mean, I've got to get this. I've got to get this list to Golf Digest, because in whoever era you're in, you always think your era is the toughest, but it's not necessarily so, because it's the time that you play in.
My buddy Matt Rudy is on here. He's a journalist for Golf Digest, and he wrote an article with you about the steroids and things like that a few years ago. He said you did an unbelievable job.
And they're all condemned. Boy, I was taken to the cleaners, but Matt, is he on?
Yeah.
But Matt, they sure found out who was right. With all the things that we found out since then is quite frightening. But Matt, I would love to do a little short story on this, because I continuously hear young guys saying you didn't beat many guys, and I'd love to just do a list of, and let me tell you, on this list I've got here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 21, 22, 30. There's about 50 major championship winners. 50. But nobody thinks that. Nobody knows that. They all just think what's happening today. They always hear today's players, this and that. Have they forgotten? I mean, there's nobody that could play like playing today that could play like Ben Hogan. Tiger Woods is the only man that could really, you could say, Tiger Woods was as good as Ben Hogan. That's the only one you can say was as good. Now, we'll see in time. But Hogan never had the time. He was denied that time. the prime of his life. 30
Right.
major championships in his prime. Think about that. He went to the British Open. He won the Masters. He won the US Open. And he went to win the Open. He got there a month before. Now, there's hard work. They call him the wee Iceman. The wee Iceman. He couldn't get back here in time to prepare for the PGA. And he wasn't prepared to just show up. Now, Tiger Woods plays in the British Open or the Open. He finishes on Sunday night. He's in his jet at 7 o'clock because there's always an airport right near the golf club. He's in his jet at 7 o'clock. It's a 7-hour flight. Okay? Let's say it's an 8-hour flight. He's here at 3 o'clock in the morning English time, but he's there at 10 o'clock American time. So he's in his bed at 12 o'clock that night. Most guys went by boat.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me 40 hours to fly. I love all these American players. Trevino, Palmer, and Tiger, and all those guys, to have played under the conditions I played in.
Right.
40 hours, no jets, stopping in places that were quite something to stop and see. And 40 hours with time changes and traveling with 6 children away from home. I'd love them to have tried.
Well, even the conditions of the golf course was just so different from week to week, right? Watching the Shell's Wonderful World of Golf is almost unbelievable to see some of the conditions.
Exactly, and I'll never forget at Augusta, I got on very well with Clifford Roberts, and Arnold and Jack said, look, you get on well with him, make an appointment with him tomorrow morning about cutting the fairway shorter, because we cannot spin the ball off these fluffy fairways. So I went to see Clifford Roberts, knocked on the door, come in, my boy, what can I do for you, son? I'm very busy. I said, Mr. Roberts, Arnold and I would like to, and Jack and I would like to know if you can please cut the fairway shorter so we can spin the ball on these firm greens. Oh, he says, do you know anything about poetry, my boy? Thank goodness I went to a very good school and I knew about Tyson, Wordsworth, Yeats, etc. And I tell you, he said, very impressive. He said, now listen carefully, my boy. The mowers are as low as they can go. Good morning.
We got LPGA Tour player Stephanie Meadows on here, Gary. She's loving every minute of this.
Oh, that's nice, Stephanie. Stephanie, I'm such a fan of ladies golf and all our charity events, which have been very significant over the years. We were the first to invite 50% women, 50% men, and that's, I believe, I hope, sincerely, it's helped ladies golf, and I'm always boosting ladies golf because, man, they can play. The only thing that upsets me as I got older, they all started driving me, and I used to say my shoulders sore, my back sore.
You know, Stephanie won a tournament last year, Gary, in Northern Ireland, and it was equal prize money for the men and the women. She won the women's part, and they played on the same course, so it's pretty interesting.
Well, that's so great to hear that. We really, you know, these ladies, they can really, really play. And I played at Wentworth Golf Club with one particular lady. I have never seen better rotation in my life on a Ben Hogan or anybody, the best rotation. And I said, how many tournaments are you playing? She says, none. I don't have a sponsor. I don't have the money. And I'd sponsored so many golfers, I just had to stop somewhere. But I felt so sad for her. There's nothing worse. It's like freedom. I lived without freedom for a long time in apartheid South Africa. And there was no, let me tell you something, when I first came to America, Charlie Sifford was not allowed to play on the tour. And Charlie and I, we became great friends, and I worked on the PGA to get him in, and I went up to his club, and I became great friends. And you know, one of the greatest honors ever, besides the Medal of Freedom that I'm getting now, which is the greatest honor ever that I've had. It's coming. But that Charlie Sifford and Lee Elder were two of the second best things. Charlie asked me, can you imagine a white South African, just after apartheid, he asked me to induct him into the Hall of Fame. And Lee Elder came to South Africa in the midst of apartheid to play in our PGA under great strain from the African Americans, and there were whites that didn't want it to happen. And my prime minister was a man who believed in apartheid, and I had to confront him. I had to get permission in those days. Can you imagine how pathetic it was? But we got him into play, and he did a great job and a great service. So my two dear friends did a marvelous amount for golf.
That's incredible. You know, the Medal of Freedom. Congratulations, and your inspiration to all of us here, and obviously lots of other people has paid off. That's a great honor.
Well, I would rather be remembered when I die one day, if you are remembered. I don't believe in legacies. People hardly remember Winston Churchill, never mind a golfer like Gary Player. But I'd like to be known that I did more for freedom and human rights than for golf. That on my epitaph, I would prefer that.
That's an amazing thing. Churchill was a great man, wasn't he? The right man at the right time.
Greatest leader, and I'm going to end up with this statement because it's so significant. He was the greatest leader, I think, ever. You know, you had September 11, which was just fatal. But he had stuff like that almost every week. They blew houses away, suburbs away, blew London away. Can you imagine living under those conditions? And thank goodness for the president of America who came in and helped, Roosevelt, who came in and helped to win the war. And it's only they won the war through Pearl Harbor, because America were not going into the war. So bad things sometimes bring out good things.
That's the truth.
But the thing is that when young boys say to me, give me one statement that can help me become a champion. And I hope your two young pros and whoever's listening to this, whatever sport you. Winston Churchill said, the height that great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but while his opponents were sleeping, he was toiling upward in the night. Right. And that's what I did when other pros were sleeping. I was in the gym and I was exercising and I was reading and getting my mind right and preparing myself. Adios.
Gary, that was unbelievable. Thank you.
And God bless America.